I'm Jordan, and you're watching Fixbook.
So today I'm going to be showing you how to replace your brake pads and rotors in your Jeep Grand Cherokee. This one's a 96.
Okay guys, and for today's project I use a 3/8 ratchet with a 13mm socket, a pair of measuring calipers. You don't have to have an impact, but a 19mm and a breaker bar will work. And of course you want a jack and jack stands for your new brake pads and or rotors as well. So with all that said, we'll go ahead and begin today's project. Okay guys, the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and lift up the car. And a good place to do it is on your differential here, your rear end, and put your jack stands under the axles there. And I've got mine just sitting there, but next thing we're going to do is remove our wheel, and we have 19mm lug nuts. Go ahead and remove that guy, and then we'll be looking at our rotor and caliper and pads. Okay guys, the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and take a flathead screwdriver, reach in here, and just kind of compress back a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's going to compress this piston a little bit. So when we remove our two 13mm fasteners, we'll be able to pull our caliper up off easier. And you'll be able to kind of wedge on this guy, and we'll pop our caliper out, and then our pads and our rotor will be exposed. Now, once you've got these guys loosened up, we can go ahead and begin to kind of pry, and our pads catch up on this guy, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. And I forgot, there's this little guy here too. We're just going to reach him around like that, and then we'll just kind of pry up like that, and we'll be able to pull this guy off. Now, our rotor is a floating rotor with a drum here, so we're going to go ahead and pull, and you're not going to be able to pull them off if your e-brake is applied, so make sure the e-brake is depressed. And those are our parking brakes. So here in just a second, I'll show you how to replace these parking brakes, but first, listen to what I've got to say about rotors. So it'll let you know when you want to replace rotors. After that, I'll show you the minimum thickness for this rotor, and I'll show you how to replace these parking brakes. Alright, we have now reached the most important segment of this video. Please do not skip over this part of the video. It's important for you to hear what I've got to say about rotors. And it's important to assure that after you've done your brake repair, your car will be safe to drive. So, we've got a few different options here when it comes to dealing with your rotors. You can either replace your rotor, have your rotor resurfaced, or you can keep and use your current rotor as is. Now, first I'm going to go over replacing the rotor. It is an absolute must to replace the rotor if its measurement is below the minimum thickness threshold to ensure your car is safe to drive. What I'm going to describe here in just a second, whether you want or don't want to replace the rotor, that's up to you. Affordability and comfort is at hand. But if it is below the minimum thickness threshold, there's no other way about it. You must replace the rotor. Okay, so now that we understand that, and here in just a second I'll show you how to measure it and be able to tell whether it's below the threshold or not. But now we're going to talk about turning your rotors. Now, there's a couple reasons you could turn your rotor, and that's to keep your present rotor, and you can pay about $10 to Napa or O'Reilly, where they have a brake lathe, and they will turn your rotor for you. It's a cheaper option than buying a whole new rotor. And the reason you'd want to do that is if you've wore your brake pads down metal to metal, and the metal pad is wedged in grooves there, and it's all torn up, then you don't want to put new pads on that torn up surface with your old rotor, so you'd want to have your rotor resurfaced, and that's to ensure longevity for your new brake pads. The other reason to have your rotors resurfaced at a parts store is if you're having vibration problems with your rotors. That is, if you're driving down the highway and you apply the brake pedal and you feel your brake pedal vibrating. If you don't like that, that would be a good reason to have your rotors turned. But if you're really particular, just keep in mind that when the rotors are thinner, they're more likely to develop that warpage problem. Because what happens is you'll be driving down the road, you'll run through a big puddle of water, and the water will splash on the hot rotor and it'll warp the rotor. The thicker the rotor is, or the newer the rotor is, it's going to be less likely to develop this problem. So resurfacing the rotor, if you have that problem, will fix the problem, but it'll come back faster. So if you have the extra money and you really don't want that problem, you can go ahead and just throw money at it and just get a new rotor every time. But if you want to see the problem go away and risk it coming back or not, it may or may not come back, you can go ahead and turn it and get out of the situation cheaper and be more comfortable. Now the last option is to just keep your rotor and put new brake pads on. That is a very acceptable option, and that's what I do about 80% of the time. Again, as long as the rotor is above the minimum threshold, because if it's not going to be safe to drive. So it's okay to put new pads on your old rotor if it's smooth like this you can see right here. As long as it's a semi-smooth surface, you can go ahead and put the new brake pads on. It's really fine. So those are the three options that you have: replacing, resurfacing, or just keeping your old one. And again, most of the time, most people are just fine keeping their old rotor and putting new pads on top of their old rotor. One more thing I almost forgot to is rotors that cause vibration, they're safe to drive. It's just an uncomfortable thing. The unsafe thing is the below the minimum thickness, but rotors that cause vibration are safe to drive. And also, this minimum thickness number, if I don't tell you exactly what the number is here in just a second, you can find it at your parts store. They'll give you a discard thickness number on your rotor, so keep that in mind too. Okay guys, so the minimum thickness for this rotor is going to be 9.5 millimeters. I'm just going to reach in here and do a thing, and I've already measured it, but that's about what you're going to do. It's 9.5 millimeters is the minimum thickness, and this one measured out to be almost 11 millimeters, so it's good to go. Okay guys, now I thought about, I'm actually going to make the parking brake replacement, the shoes replacements for the parking brakes, I'm going to make that a separate video. So right, because most of the time you don't have to replace that. Now, as far as replacing these pads, what you're going to do is for this guy, you're going to reach in and you'll kind of prop up on them, and you'll be able to wedge that out. I don't want to damage this nice connection I have here, so I'm just going to slip them back on, and this pad pops out like that. You can see, and then it'll snap back in like so. So you get the idea of how to remove and put these guys back on. The new one will slide on and snap into place. This one will, and that one just snaps back in. Now, so next what we're gonna do is we're gonna fit this guy on here, and we're gonna work them up in like so, and we're going to push our slide pins. You can see the slide pin right here. You can see I push it back, and you see it's come back out. So push those back in, because in order to get up over this, that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to push them back. And then we're gonna fit them over here, get our slide pins out of the way, and then get them in there like that, and make sure that guy's clear too, and then just kind of hit them in there. Then we're gonna pull this guy. I'll take a flat head, and that guy's supposed to set right like that. Then we're gonna work our fasteners back in here. We're gonna tighten them down, and you're pretty much good to go, guys. The only thing you need to remember is after you've completed this brake job, you need to depress the brake pedal all the way. The piston is gonna put clamping force on these pads, and then you'll have braking power. So that pretty much concludes today's little project. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you would like, subscribe, comment, and all that fun stuff. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.